the circumstances that we find ourselves in, no matter what those circumstances are, we can see things as a motivation to grow and to prosper, or we can see them as a discouragement and a loss of expectations. And I know for myself, these past 2 years, maybe even more than that, I've had my own battles going on in my mind. I have this back and forth between what I know I should think and what experience is telling me, what I know I should believe, and how I really feel. I find this tension between longing for the past and defining a new future. There's a tension between embracing that new future with a hope-filled expectation and also at the same time dreading, well, what might happen. And that war in my mind, that battle of thoughts and feelings, those things have been affecting my quality of life. It can cause you, whether you have all negative thoughts or whether you just have this unsettled turmoil in your mind, it can be frustrating and you find yourself frustrated with everything. It can be exhausting and you find yourself without energy to deal with anything or anybody. It can be frightening and you can find yourself projecting fears onto places that really you don't need to be afraid. And here's one thing I came to realize. Preparing this message came at the right time for me. Because I began to realize that the life you have is a reflection of the thoughts that you think. The life that you have is a reflection or even a product of the thoughts that you think. When you look at your life on a scale of 1 to 10, do you find yourself being more worried or more peaceful? Are you more concerned about the what ifs, or are you at peace knowing that God's got this no matter what happens? And again, we know what we should think. Honestly, though, if you look back and reflect on your week, have you been more worried and disturbed, or have you been more at peace? On a scale of 1 to 10, do you find yourself more negative and critical, or do you find yourself more positive and encouraging, like Caleb? Right? You find yourself more negative and critical, finding things wrong, finding things to be outraged about, finding things to be upset about, or do you find yourself more positive, looking for the good, being more encouraging, offering hope, right? Where do you land on that spectrum? Do you find yourself thinking more worldly thoughts, or do you find yourself with your mind inclining more toward the eternal? Do you think more about the here and now and what's going on? Or do you find hope and encouragement because you know the one in whom you have believed, what he has promised, and where you are headed? And lastly, do you think more about yourself, what you stand to gain or lose? Or do you think more about Christ and what is honoring to him and what will draw you closer to him? Now you'll notice that these two spectrums, the ones are all worldly mindsets, and the tens are all kingdom and eternal mindsets. And sometimes we will find ourselves kind of living on the border of those two kingdoms, which are constantly at war with each other. And where we find difficulty is when we're living on the border and we're looking at the line and we're going, how close can I get to the line without crossing over it? How close can I get to the line without wandering into sin? How close can I get to the line and still have my way? How close can I get to the line? And the problem with that is that your focus is where? It's on the line instead of where? On where you're going and who you're following. And so it's no wonder we find ourselves in a misstep. And it's really easy when we're living on the border. It's really easy to shift our allegiance. It's really easy to drift back and forth, to trespass onto the other side of the fence, if you will. And I don't know about you, but I've found myself there more often than I would care to admit, which I just admitted. Am I alone? Anybody else find themselves with this ongoing war in your mind somehow? Show hands. Okay, guys, look around the room real quick. Keep your hands up. Look around the room real quick. We're not alone. We're not alone. We're not the only ones going through this, right? If you want to fit in church, don't put on a plastic face. Don't be fake, because everybody else is going through the same difficulties.